Perfect. I see it's 101, so I think we'll get this kicked off now. My name is Nicholas Foisey. I am the marketing manager for Compass IT Compliance. I'd like to thank everyone for joining this webinar today, titled Lessons Learned from a Virtual CISO. So if you're unfamiliar with Compass IT Compliance, offering virtual CISO services is one of the core areas of the work we do. And when we were thinking of a presentation topic, we thought it might be interesting to get some insight from our virtual CISO team who work in the trenches with various organizations across New England and across the United States to help them shore up their information security programs and foster a culture of cybersecurity. They get a very unique view of some of the challenges from the inside of organizations. Now, obviously, we can't share organizational names, but we can share, some anecdotal stories, some things that we see across the board with clients, areas they struggle and areas they succeed in. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce, I've kind of already told you who Compass IT Compliance is, but I'm going to introduce the panelists here. We have, I believe it's five panelists from the Compass IT Compliance virtual CISO team. So I'm going to let each panelist kind of introduce themselves. First with CJ Hurd.
Good afternoon, everybody. So my name is CJ. I am the Senior Vice President of the vCISO practice here at Compass and one of the architects of it. Background on me, I've been doing cybersecurity, which makes me sound really old now, for I'll say well over 20 years instead of giving the exact number. Prior to joining Compass, I was with the United States Coast Guard heading up cybersecurity at all different levels and from the DC point of view, out looking for the entire service and 50,000 users. Last 3 years with the Coast Guard, I got the Cybersecurity Officer of the Year award, 3 years running, including for the Department of Homeland Security. So it kind of put me on, I think, Compass's radar where they came calling and looked for some interest in joining Compass. So I've been here for 5 years and again, doing this virtual CISO work. Absolutely love it. Do it with a lot of companies over a lot of different verticals. So excited to talk to you guys today and share some of our experiences and stories. Thanks, Nick.
Thank you, CJ. Pass the mic over to you, John.
Great. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining today. So I've had the opportunity to work with CJ and the team. Great opportunity to work with a number of different clients across multiple verticals. Everyone's different. And that's one thing that we definitely learned, but the goal is to improve everyone's cybersecurity profile and basically protect them from threats. Prior to Compass, I worked for Schneider Electric, managed systems for 140,000 users, spent about 10 years in different operational facets from database technologies, web technologies, et cetera. And then another 10 years or so in the cybersecurity practice, leading up identity and access management, directory services, working with a number of risk, basically mitigation strategies, et cetera, working with the executive teams to develop programs to resolve and mitigate risks. So I'm glad to be here today.
Thank you, John.
All right, I think I'm next. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jeff Torrance. I've been working at Compass now for about a year and a half. Started off on the audit side. I worked there for about half a year. Then I moved over to the vCISO side with CJ and the team. Prior to that, I worked for the world's finest Navy for 8 years. I served as an intel specialist in multiple commands, ranging from aviation to naval special operations. While I'm there, I did multiple deployments, went to some hot places, then did a couple arduous deployments in Greece and Italy. Those ones were pretty tough. That I got out, and as many a former military member I want to do once freed from the shackles of daily shaving, I grew a beard, embarked on looking for civilian employment. I found comfort in the military again and went over to the Air Force, supported them as a civilian. Did that for about a year and a half, ran the gamut of IT from security, networking, even in the help desk for a little while. And then before I transitioned over to Compass, where I've been since.
Thanks, Jeff.
All right, I'm up next.
Yes, Don.
All right, so yeah, I've been with Compass on the vCISO team for about a year and a half now. I came from kind of primarily an auditing background. I was a QSA at NTT Security for about 6 years there. So I did a lot of traveling, a lot of just going around the world, seeing how both service providers and merchants and how companies really run their security programs, and been helping them out fix and identify those types of problems. And then before that, I was in the Air Force and did government contracting for IT and security at US Stratcom. So I've kind of had a pretty good background on technical IT measures, and then kind of being able to guide a program to be able to meet those really specific IT security goals.
Thanks, Donnie. And the last but not least, Mr. Brian Kelly.
Thanks, everybody. Yeah, I'm the newest member to the team. So I've been here a couple of months with the virtual CISO practice at Compass, but I was a customer of Compass over a decade ago. I've been in higher ed for the last 17 years in roles of information security officer at Quinnipiac University and a program director at EDUCAUSE. So really excited about the opportunity to come and be part of a company that I've known and worked with for over a decade, and join the team and sort of add my perspective from higher ed, which people always think is easy, but it's like a small city. We've got institutions that have airports, institutions that have nuclear power plants, banking, food service, financial services. So higher ed is a little bit of everything from a risk and a cyber perspective. So glad to be here and join the conversation today.
Thank you so much, Brian. Thank you. Thank you, all of you. And I just wanted to go through a couple of housekeeping items before we kick this off. There's 2 poll questions. If you see on the bottom panel in Zoom, if you hit the polls button, there's 2 polls questions. We'd love for everybody to give their input on those polls. Also, the way this is going to work today, it's a panel format. So I'm going to pose a topic or a question. All 5 of these gentlemen will have the opportunity to comment on that topic or question. And we'd love for you guys to comment in the message feature. Just fire off any questions you might have, any comments you might have. They'll go through me. I'll pose them to the moderator. I'll pose them to the panelists as soon as I see them. So feel free to use that message feature often. And today's session will be recorded. It'll be up on our YouTube channel, Compass IT Compliance, later this week. And I believe that's all I have for housekeeping items today. One last thing, make sure you set your first and last name in Zoom as whatever your first and last name is. So that way, when we give the list of those who attended to ISAC in New England, they're able to reference it with their registrations and give out the proper CPE credits. So without further ado, we'll jump into the first topic, and I will put this out to you first, CJ, since you head up the Virtual CISO team. Topic number 1. As virtual CISOs, you support clients in multiple verticals. Can you discuss the common cybersecurity and compliance challenges across verticals?
Yes, Nick, and I absolutely can. So yeah, so as Nick's mentioning here, we do support clients across multiple verticals. The number is I don't even know how to put a number on the different verticals that we're working with, and the challenges are similar, but the challenges are also different. And I think when we look back at where we are today in 2022, I think one of the biggest challenges we face is enterprise risk management. And we have all, depending on the size, and really no matter what size the organization is, we have different levels, from executive management down to the newest person who's been hired. And when we identify risk, right, we don't keep that risk in that level that we work in, right? The goal is to report that risk up. The folks that we're talking to today, you guys have a security backgrounds for the most part, or a security interest, or within your organization, understand what we're talking about in terms of risks. And the goal here is not to ignore risk, right? That's the last thing we ever want to do. We want to call out the risk. I use the term that there's no wrong answers. And I think what ends up happening is everybody's so busy. So we may report risk, we may have risk, and we may have it at the level that we work in, but does it ever get reported up? And in the end, the CEO, the executive management is in charge of the entire company, and that risk has to roll all the way up. They have to be a part of the decision process. They have to be understanding what the remediation is going to be for that risk. And I think what we're seeing is maybe we think that risk is too minor to report up. Maybe we think that we don't want to look like we're not doing our job because we're reporting a risk, right? Our job is to report risk. Our job is to not ignore the risk and make sure we decide what to do with that risk. So I think, from a starter, that's one of the things that I'm seeing now. The other side is, and it's in the question here alone, is being compliant secure, right? And I think a lot of companies focus on the compliance piece of it, right? Well, I got SOC 2, so I'm compliant from that standpoint. I have an ISO certification, so we're compliant. We did a risk assessment, and that shows that we're compliant. I don't believe that being compliant makes you secure. I think sometimes we focus more on being compliant, and instead of like what I will always say is, if we can focus on security and making sure that security is top notch, compliance comes naturally. Compliance is the side piece to being secure. So I think when you start looking at it from those two standpoints, we really want to focus on that security piece. I think companies are focused on the compliance side. The third piece too, that I see, and then I'll stop talking, give somebody else a chance, which doesn't happen very often, as I'm sure Jeff will be quick to tell you. But one of my talking points has always been, and again, it's a transition from the military, right? And coming over to the private sector, which is security is a cost center. Security is a cost center. Security costs money. Security is not necessarily a revenue generator. And I believe that security is now as much a revenue generator as anything now. I think security has become a bigger part of operations. And, any of you who are watching this can probably relate to the fact that when we're bringing in business, it has a dependency on our security program. When we're vetting a vendor, we're not choosing the vendor without a security program. If we're comparing two vendors, we're taking the one with the better security program and recommending them. What we're seeing now is that, having a top-notch security program, having the security positions in place, having gone through those risk assessments, showing that you're not only compliant, but you are actually secure, and you don't just have a designed security program, but you're actually operating. I think we're seeing that's becoming a revenue generator. It's becoming a marketing tool for companies. So again, changing that talk point from security being just a budget and a cost center with no recouping of that money to now having the organization look at it as a revenue generator and part of the business operations.
I've got a couple of things to add to that, CJ. So, and I think it ties in with exactly what you were just saying. So, and during this talk, I know that we're going to want to try to get into things that we've seen, and we want to get away from, the standard cookie cutter stuff that you see out there. But we've all taken certifications. We've all gotten those things. One of the biggest things that they harp on there is executive buy-in. And I think that is really one of the biggest things. A lot, kind of like what CJ was saying, if they see this as just a compliance topic, there might not be as much buy-in from the executive leadership. It's almost just a check in the box. So trying to get that buy-in so that they permeate throughout the rest of the company that, hey, this isn't just a check in the box item. This is to make sure that we are secure against external threats, that we're doing our best due diligence to make sure that we're not taking on unnecessary risk. That is a huge thing. And it takes a lot of skill to be able to present that as a vCISO, to have that executive leadership buy-in and believe in us that we're going to develop that program. The next thing I think is, all right, you've gotten the buy-in, you've established all those goals. What is the other issue that I'm seeing? I think one is that there's a lack of understanding of best practices. So you have the executive leadership has assigned an individual, they've given the buy-in, they want to be secure. Now that individual is going out and he or she is trying to develop a security program, and they look online and they see all these different conflicting pieces of advice or evidence or a recommendation, such as, like, you can look at something as minute as password policies, right? You look at one thing, a password policy will say, oh, you have to have X amount of characters and have complexity, et cetera, et cetera. But then you look at another thing in this and they say, oh, no, we're not going to rotate passwords. Or they look at another blog and the other blog will say, we shouldn't be using passwords at all, and let's go to password lists. So they really, I think what I've noticed working with clients recently is that they're looking for us to not only just help give them direction, but help them understand what best practices are. And another piece on that is that best practices aren't the same for each company. So you'll work with one company and you can kind of give them more of they have the budget to implement a lot of these technologies. So you can kind of go crazy with it and just implement all these awesome things. Other companies, that might not be really practical. So you have to work within those constraints to try to help them still be secure while staying underneath budget.
Yeah, and I can add to that one a little bit too. I was going to mention that resource is always going to be that, I think, big driver. With that buy-in comes, what is our budget for security? If it is a cost, I mean, there's a value that gives too, but what's the right amount to be spending? We're never going to have unlimited resources and funds to be able to do what we want to do, but that's where I think when you take that risk and you get up to the level and you have that good risk scoring where you can say to the business owner, if you don't do this, this is what we're potentially looking at. This is the risk either to our reputation, to our clients, to our business. And we believe that it is worth this resource. And it could be time, it could be, we need to hire a person to do this work. We don't have the manpower to actually conduct this right amount of review to be able to implement the controls we want to do. It could be a technology. We could be trying to move and outsource the function to a specialized expert in that field. And so when you get that executive buy-in, it usually comes with the idea that we're going to be able to allocate the resources that we need. If we say this is a high risk and management agrees with us, they're going to be able to move forward, whether it's a private situation or they're going to go up to a board and say, they have to be able to make that case that there's a reason we're asking for this. It's not just because we read in a book somewhere. There's a real reason, a business case, that if we don't do this, it's going to end up costing us more money. And we're trying to save you that headache of you're going to pay 2, 3, 4 times as much if we go down the road and either build up a bunch of tech debt where we have to go and then fix it later, or we actually get exploited and compromised, and then we have a whole host of costs to come with that.
Yeah, it's a good point, Donnie. And I think one of my follow-up questions is how many times have we gone into an engagement? And again, the buck doesn't necessarily stop with us, right? We can help oversee and build you a program, help it operate, help from that strategic standpoint. But what point is, hey, we need to have a budget for this, this, and this. Like, well, you're our budget. We just hired you. We just brought people in. We can't do solutions too. So again, I think understanding and aligning that business strategy to the security piece of the program, I think is again another piece where we find that we help with that, and it makes a big impact as you start identifying where we can add resources to tackle things, and resources are they're people. It's technology. It comes in various ways.
Thank you, John. Any other comments?
I don't know who's of the order, so I would just jump in and sort of say, I come to it from the perspective of we're talking about buy-in. A lot of challenges are around executive support or executive buy-in. Right. And I think sometimes the executives hear buying, right? Budget, spend, cost, right? What are they buying? I always like to think about, like, as we're talking about enablement, right? So when we go to them and we need resources, packaging those resources, those asks in a way that maybe shows how they're going to make more money or how security is going to enable them to be a better business partner. As CJ had said, to reduce risk from a third party perspective. So customers and partners would be more inclined to work with this company because they've done security right, because they've invested in security, and it makes them more nimble to market, more agile. And it shows them it's not only spend, it's not just a cost center, right? So I think keeping that in the back of our minds is always really important when we're thinking about pitching to executives around asks. We want to ask them for more budget or more resources, but really packaging in how that investment makes the company more secure, but also a better, it enables the company to do their core business better.
Agreed.
Absolutely.
Perfect. We'll move it along to the next topic then. That's you guys are staying right on track, and I love that. So the next topic is, what makes a cybersecurity program effective?
Well, thanks. I'll take that one. So, we've already talked about a lot of the common threads here, and obviously the cybersecurity program is all about protecting information and systems from cyber threats. And the key thing as well is that cybersecurity, it's a journey. It's nothing that you're going to do overnight. It's something that you have to build on time and time again. As the organization grows and as you learn, then you need to adjust with the new threats and the new times of things. And we can all tell you that that one cybersecurity program from one company to another it's all different. And CJ is probably going to laugh about this, because when I first started working with CJ and the team, I'm like, well, wait, there's got to be a way to just tackle this. It's like, no, everything's slightly different. And why is it different? Well, it's different because you have different industries, you have different regulations. And then you also have what are those success factors of the organization? And then also, what are those metrics that are trying to drive specific business outcomes, which ties it to the executive sponsorship and leadership that you typically need to ensure that any program is successful, whether it's a cybersecurity program, whether it's a digital transformation. You need to have that executive buy-in, those check-in points, the metrics to track those programs to ensure that you're going to achieve your core goals. Now, I mean, I would say if you were to take a look at some of the elements of a program, and I'll highlight on these, I'm sure my teammates will hop in on this as well. But you can break this down in a couple different areas. I would say one is you might be looking at things from an administrative control perspective, and you may be looking at things from a technical perspective. When you think about administrative, well, it's risk appetite. How comfortable is your organization in handling risk? It's also about that element of your policies. Policies, certainly we know that that's a structure and part of the program, but it's about your internet use. It's about your corporate device use. It's about data privacy and data compliance. Another core element there is, what type of framework are you going to work within? Is it something within NIST or ISO? The framework basically is important because it gives you structure to manage your program, and it gives you those goalposts to basically track where are we today and what are we going to need to do to address things for tomorrow. Another key thing is important here is your asset management, right? Ultimately, you can't secure what you don't know exists. And then when asset management is all about the perspective of from deployment to decommissioning, it's the entire life cycle that's required for how a new asset comes into your environment, ensuring that you know what it is, so that way you can ensure that it's secure. Another key element is identity and access management, just about your assets in terms of knowing what exists. Well, you also need to do this in terms of your users. So again, back to the onboarding of a user. When someone joins your organization, you want to ensure that you assign the appropriate privileges for the job role. As they progress through their career, maybe you need to remove specific privileges, but also when you leave the organization, as employee leaves an organization, you need to ensure that those permissions are in fact removed. Another key element I would say within the administrative type perspective is all on the security awareness training, something that we do quite a bit with our clients in different facets. CJ, I think, was actually up last night training some folks in Hong Kong. So CJ just doesn't stop working, actually, I don't think, but but certainly cybersecurity awareness training is certainly a key element because people are our weakest link, and they need to be continually informed as far as how to ensure that their program is effective. Moving into some of the technical controls, and I know there's a lot of folks have heard about, zero trust. It is a concept that you need to include or consider including in terms of your technical controls. But you really move more into, you can consider things like NAC or zero trust. You can also bring in things like endpoint protection, typically is when you start thinking about specific technical controls. That's where, certainly your AV or your next gen endpoint protection, which is where you're not only incorporating those next gen capabilities, but also your OS hardening, your firewall, your internet security, and also vulnerability scanning and such. Another key element under technical controls is your email security, right? You want to ensure that you have the appropriate email filtering and proper controls in place to protect from malicious emails and such. A couple other points, and I'm sure the folks can join in too, is logging and monitoring. So you need logging and monitoring is essential in order to detect and respond to activities. And ultimately, whether you have the opportunity to move to a mature solution to centralize your logging capabilities, well, then that is great in order to respond. Another element is around network security, right? It's your firewalls, and even with some of the next-gen firewalls, you have the ability to detect malware and detect data exfiltration. I would say, maybe the last but not least is vulnerability management as a whole. And this is the process, the procedures. Cyber threats are coming out new every single day. And ultimately, it's your vulnerability management, your systems, your tools, your people, your processes that you have in place to detect and respond and remediate to those activities. So I would say, in short, I know this is a brief overview of what would make an effective program, from your sponsorship to your administrative controls to your technical controls. But the key thing is they're all different. They're all important, but all of these elements I feel are important in order to effectively protect the organization, your people, and your process and technology.
Yeah. So adding on to what John's saying, so John did a great job of outlining so many things that make up your security program, right? And it's not one thing, as you just heard, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. And so now when we come back down to what makes that program effective, well, we got all these different items that we care about, and we have to worry about. So now, from an overarching look, what's going to make that program effective? I'm going to tell you, number one for me is, and again, anybody who's been in this world, it's going to be that executive buy-in. And when leadership buys in, when leadership supports the efforts, when leadership understands all the things that John just talked about in terms of what makes up a cybersecurity program, and that's going to make that cybersecurity program effective, that carries so much weight. And just telling you, and it energizes you, right? When you're in any facet of the organization, when leadership gets involved and they're supporting your efforts, it's motivating. And, story I have for you. So just on Monday, I did a BCP test with a company, and it's the fourth year we've done this BCP test. And the CEO has been invited every single year. She's incredible. She's busy, right? She does. John says, I work a lot. She works more than I do. And she just hasn't been able to make any of the BCP tests. Well, she was able to make Monday's test, and she was there for the entire time. She had gone into the plan and made comments and made some recommendations of things. She was active in the BCP test. And afterwards, we debriefed with a few of the team members, and I cannot explain to you the energy they felt having the CEO involved, have buy-in, basically acknowledging the work that was done and how important the conversation is. And I can't wait to see what that turns into, because that executive buy-in support, just again, any one of you who have had that in their place of work, any time in their career, knows what that feels like. So it was really great. And then that really ties back to that strategic and business alignment. It's great when you get that. So again, totally agree with John. Everything, those all make up an effective program. And I really think that you tie that back with executive support and leadership, and it goes a hell of a long way.
I've got one other thing to add to that too. So same thing, along with what CJ and John just said, those are hugely important things. The next thing I think that falls under the executive buy-in would then be buy-in from employees as well. So that one's not as talked about as much, but if you have an employee base that is open-minded and willing to improve, that is so huge when it comes to improving the security program. And the ways you get to that is, one, I think we've kind of touched on it a little bit before, but having a plan of how we're going to improve the program and communicating it effectively. And then the next point I think would be, I believe Nick had it in the poll, but as a vCISO, being a force multiplier. So that's where one of the skill sets that a vCISO should have comes in, that's not really talked about as much, I think, and that's people skills. Being able to work with people, making them feel good, making them understand how to do their job, making them feel like they're part of the mission and that they're going to help improve the company. When that happens, it can be so easy to work with clients. I think Brian he can probably attest to this now. We're working with one client. It is the easiest client to work with. They're so proactive about telling us what their faults are. They don't try to hide anything. They're very constructive when it comes to looking for ways ahead. So, and it's all because they do have that executive buy-in, but every single one of them that we're working with is also taking ownership of their own facet of the program and wanting to improve it. When you get that, it makes the working relationship so much easier.
Perfect. Did anybody else want to comment before we move on to the next one?
I think
Perfect. We're exactly right on schedule. 10 minutes a topic. We're looking good.
No, it's how we make. Anybody who does not know Nick very well,
Yeah,
he is. You would think he was in the military. He is all over the time thing.
Yes, I am. The next topic is information security program responsibilities and security personnel can exist in various parts of an organization. What trends have you seen of what works well or what doesn't?
I'll take this one. So my background previously was as an auditor, so it was a lot of, within a couple months, you visit an organization, you try and understand it the best you can, figure out what's working well, what's not. You write that report and you get out. So you don't usually get to see the really in-depth, the people, the relationships, since a lot of it is that quick turn on that work, but you do get to see a very wide kind of breadth of different ways a security program can be ran. And you can really directly see as you're running an audit, how prepared is this organization? Are they upfront? Do they have that culture? They're looking to try and make improvements, or are they looking to pass an audit? Are they, they are trying to give you the least that they can to get you to say yes and get them a report so that they can get rid of you for a year? Or are they really looking for that buy-in that they want you to find things wrong with them so that they can elevate that up to their management and get that approval to put in those extra resources because you're a trusted advisor and you're telling them this is something that's actually going to make you into a better place. And so some of those areas where I've seen, the best approach, you have a dedicated security team. They either report maybe horizontally to a CIO or their direct report up to a CEO or an executive member like that. And you have a dedicated team of skilled professionals. That's so rare. I mean, unless you are a major corporation, no one's going to have that kind of manpower just to have 3 or 4 people dedicated to security. Usually the way it is set up is it's IT. That's, I'd probably say 75+% of the time, your IT team is going to have security as an additional duty. And it's not really great. There's no reason why IT is responsible for security other than they touch technology. Technology has a lot of security concerns, and so therefore they kind of toss in, I guess you guys are responsible for the company's security as well. And it can go well if the IT team really owns each area and they want to make it okay, we have change management. IT doesn't necessarily own change management, but they're going to be probably the major changers for an organization. So they could do a really great job with that. Vulnerability management, they're probably going to own almost all of that. Endpoint management, but there are other areas like business continuity plans. There's really no reason why IT is going to be responsible for the continuity of a business. They're going to have a lot of inputs to disaster recovery, preparedness, but a lot of times that's just an additional thing. Sure, the IT team's going to also figure out a business continuity plan. And I think that's where it breaks down when you just have one silo, that's just an additional duty thrown at them. And it's just something extra, they're not getting more resources to do this work. It's just an extra thing and that they're going to try and get done. So that's where it can start going wrong when it's just an extra and it's not a discrete thing that's really reported. There's not a requirement that's being set up and to the executive level of here's how our security programs being managed. It's just a small piece of the IT program. Another side I've seen is where you have finance being responsible for security and compliance. And this usually comes from older companies that, were set up before there really was, dedicated IT teams. It was just an additional duty that was on the administrative side to handle, some random computer that got brought in. And where I saw this was in print media. So I did a few different assessments for companies that were responsible for doing massive amounts of paper data. Either they're getting inbound mail and they're scanning it and digitalizing it and putting it out for different resources, or they're responsible for taking, they're sending mailers out there, printing your credit card statements and then sending out millions and millions of letters a day. So both of these have massive amounts of data that are either coming in or going out. And there's lots of technical requirements that really should be met. And I saw the weakness really being where finance was very good at making sure that things got done. Yes, we had an audit, we had a risk management meeting, but there was usually very low organizational knowledge about security. So they didn't know if they were doing it well or not. And they, I think, really got the most value when they had a skilled resource come in and the outside person to give them those improvements, help them get those processes to really get the objective that was needed. They were usually very focused on getting work done, but not necessarily understanding why they were doing it. They were just kind of doing something to do something because a piece of paper told them to. And then the next one is the operations, is the last one I'll talk about. And operations, this is where it can really, again, turn a top-notch or a very issue-heavy thing. Is, the operations team is worried about making sure the business is fulfilling its functions. It's getting that product out the door, it's delivering a service. And so if one of the goals of that product or that service is for it to be secure, I think it can really be done well, where they are driving this to be a need, that we need to make sure our product goes out secure. It's getting pen tests, it's getting code scans, everything has been approved, documented, and it's there, and they're upfront about how they're doing well and what they're not doing well. But the other side of it is, if the operations team is encouraged to, we want to sell this thing and we want to sell 100 of them, and we need to hit this number by the next quarter, that's usually where security is going to drop down their priority list. If it's, in between adding a feature or fixing a bug, a lot of times those teams are going to go with adding that feature in, and then that milestone to fix a bug is going to be down to the next quarter, and then it's going to pass the next quarter until it's usually an emergency. And then that's when it suddenly boils up and gets done, is once something is already broken or it comes out in public vulnerability notice, then they're all hands on deck. But it can definitely lead to those points where you're not fixing something until it's broken.
Hey, Donnie, let me ask you a question. And again, I'll put you on the spot. I apologize if you need to get a drink of water while I ask the question. Feel free. But I am putting you on the spot. So as a very, very, very experienced auditor, a lot of the companies we work with now, as their virtual CISO representing their security program, they understand the separation, right? I'll go back to IT, as you mentioned that one, between IT and security, right? Separating those functions so we don't have the same hands, in the cookie jar, auditing or assessing or validating, something that IT is doing. As you've audited these companies, they're trying to do it kind of under the same umbrella. What's been the management response to a finding that they don't have separation of duties between what's maybe a security function and what's an IT function? Is it just a lack of resource, a lack of money, is it a lack of understanding? What's been your experience with that?
Yeah, I would say it's usually a case where they try to do, they're trying to do the most they can with what they have, is I think the best way to look at it. But in general, it's almost impossible to just have a dedicated security person added to a staff for a small company, for at least a lot of companies. When you're talking about, after you pay salary and all the benefits, maybe 150, 200,000, wherever you're looking at that number, that's a big ask. And it's also a pretty specialized skill set to just ask someone to have, okay, this person's doing some other function, we also want you to be our security expert. So I think it is a tough ask to really say we need a dedicated person to be our security expert for most companies, which is where I think we can help out and be that augmented person to be that extra resource without tying up a full FTE. I think the way it can work well is if you can really separate out the steps needed to monitor security and compliance, break it out from all the technical practices and understanding, and really just, okay, we need to do these 30 things. We need to do them once a month. And that's where you can get someone who's just really well detailed, organized, that type of person, and just have them be responsible for facilitating the conversation, for gathering the information and getting up to management. They don't have to be an expert on every security framework. As long as they understand the business, they understand what's going on, and they have the skills to be able to work with the different teams and escalate up concerns, that person could also be that key point person in a security program for a company.
Yeah, and I think that is, piggybacking on that, I think that's one of the lines in the sand from a company's maturity level, right? Once they get to the point where they can have the vision to bring, and again, I'll be the first one to admit I'm not very objective to it, because I understand the value in having a security professional actually running your security program. But I think that's also the transition in a maturity level. And I use terms like play big, right? Just because you're a small company, you're still playing with the big boys, and they're still going to require you to have certain facets of a security program. So I think that's probably one of the lines in the sand is to where you make that next step in your maturity level as an organization.
Absolutely. And that's where, sometimes you get it by design, with a board or a company says this is what we're going to do, and it's a proactive. But a lot of the times it's something went wrong. Our clients are pushing us and saying, hey, we need this audit by the end of the year or else we're going to drop you. And then that's when security gets added into a program, and it becomes more of a maturity driver to get to that better place.
Yeah,
Definitely.
Agree.
I would say too, actually, just to add one point onto that, kind of to tie in with what you guys were saying, trying to distribute security to all facets of the company. I think one of the bigger things that you can do, it's hard to implement, but getting a security steering committee going, if you can get buy-in from all different facets of the company where you're meeting, whether it be bi-monthly or every other month or something like that, at least everybody's getting into the same meeting and they're all talking and they're all discussing security throughout the whole company. Because like what Donnie and CJ both said, so often security it becomes that compliance point, and then it just gets segregated to some corner of the company that's only addressed once there's a request that comes in or there's some urgent matter. If you're proactive and you get everybody involved, it makes it much easier going forward.
Yeah, it aligns that business strategy, right? What's happening throughout the rest of the organization and how do we tie it back together? So, no, good, great point, Jeff.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Unless anybody else had any additional comment on that, we'll move it along to the next one.
I was watching the clock, Nick. I knew you were ready.
I also want to remind all of the viewers that at any point, feel free to use the chat feature here to ask any comments and questions that you may have for the audience. For the panelists here, and I will pose those immediately.
We love questions.
Without further
ado, love being put on the spot.
Next one. We often hear that people are the weakest link in cybersecurity.
We just did this. Oh, no. I think you just skipped one, Nick.
No, did I skip one?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's Nick trying to stay on time.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jeff. When starting an information security program, what are some strategies, tips, and tricks for getting the program going?
The only reason I know is because I was going to answer this one first. So yeah, this is kind of one that I was thinking about a lot. And, we talked previously a lot about executive buy-in and making sure that the company understands security as a whole. A lot of theory, basically, we're talking about. This is now we've got the executive buy-in. We have a resource. We're now trying to get our boots on the ground, and we're going to figure out how we're going to build up the security program. One of the things you have to do right off the bat is assess what the security culture is currently. Where are they at? And there's, like I mentioned before, we've all taken security certifications. The thing that they'll tell you to do, and I don't disagree with this, is conduct a risk assessment and get an understanding of what all the risks are with the company, and then base your program or how you're going to start building it off of that. And theoretically, that is great. And I wish that we could do that every single time, but so often that just doesn't work. You need to get in there and you need to start working. So some ways, the unconventional means that you can start to get an idea of where the company is at. And one of my favorite ways is I have that company treat me as if I'm a new employee, and then they take me right through the onboarding process. Now, through that, the reason I like it so much is because you can understand so many different facets of the security culture of the company right off the bat. You can see how they handle access control. You can see how they handle asset management. You can see, do they have a ticketing system where they're tracking all of these things to completion? Is there a cybersecurity awareness training platform where they're addressing, the key cybersecurity awareness points that need to be addressed? If it's a healthcare company, is there training for HIPAA? If we're dealing with a lot of European countries, is there GDPR training? Are they giving you an employee handbook? Is there NDAs, background checks, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? You can learn so much stuff from just going through that onboarding process. And through that, you take all of that stuff, and then you're now able to identify the points of the company where you'll need to work on first and start developing, either improving processes, tightening things up, or implementing stuff that just currently isn't there. That's my favorite. I'm sure some of these other guys have their own methods that they use.
Sure. I'll actually jump on here. So one thing I guess I really look at is talking to management about what's the goal here. What are we looking to do? Do you want to have your kind of due diligence and have a good operating security controls? Are you worried about, we just don't even know if we're technically doing what we're supposed to be doing. So then that might lead you in more of a technical gap analysis.
Yeah.
Or there's the other side of, are we really worried about, we have a compliance thing, we need to get SOC 2 certified. Okay, then that's the driver. So it's really looking, what is the driver for security for this company right now? The best case is you're being brought in proactively where, yep, let's just build this thing up from scratch and we're going to make sure we're going to check it off line item by line item until we have a fully fleshed out and running program and we don't have any real pressure on us to do that. That's rarely the case. So I think, yeah, really looking at, what's going wrong right now, let's get in there and fix it. And then from there, that's kind of once you hit those high priority, high risk areas, you can use that as kind of the springboard to get to the less critical, as you go, really, it's a kind of a running risk assessment. The way I see it is, okay, let's fix the things that are tactically going wrong right now. And then once we put out the fires, okay, let's go next. What else is going wrong? What's it next? And then you kind of you prioritize your approach that way to building out a security program.
Yeah.
First off, Jeff, your tips and trick going through the onboarding process is a phenomenal idea, because you're going through eyes wide open, looking in each direction. And again, Donnie, I completely agree with you, but I'm going to ask you the question, and I know you already know the answer, so put you on the spot again. When do we ever get brought in proactively?
Yeah.
I have one good one.
You have one, okay. And I think where we're always getting brought in and is we're there after the need has come up. And they've probably put it off enough. It's not abnormal. It is what it is. And I think that's back to that line in the sand I talked about from a maturity standpoint. It's where, hey, the need to get more mature has come up. There's enough questionnaires that are coming in. They're asking questions we don't know what it means, or we're having to say no, or we're answering yes, but we're lying through our teeth. And I think that in an ideal situation, yes, we get to come in proactively, get to have a nice little onboarding, understand what you have, as Jeff said, and we get to go through that risk assessment, and we get to maybe put in an actual 30, 60, 90-day plan, and then carve out the rest of the year. Unfortunately, the world that we live in, and you guys watching this can probably attest to it, is we're in a more reactive situation than a proactive situation. And again, I think that's just the nature of it. And I think it's also unfortunately late to the party that security has become, in the business operations side. I think we're there. I think we're certainly there. I just attended a conference that had almost 3,000 people at it, all talking security for almost a week, and loved it. So in those conversations, it's there. We've arrived. Now it's how do we keep getting bigger? How do we get there in a more proactive standpoint, so that we're not just reactive, as Donnie mentioned?
Definitely.
And I would say some of the advantage of having a risk assessment, or even if it's an outside firm doing that, you get these nice charts that are maybe black and red and orange, and that comes across the executive's desk, and then they're basically obviously very concerned about why things are so high critical and things that do need to get addressed. So it is a prompt actually to then therefore get visibility to then get the program going. But certainly sometimes those risk assessments are a strategy, a trigger to really bring down the fact that there are some issues and sponsorship to get addressed.
Definitely. I mean, that's ideally how it would start. So just everything is laid out. Fortunately, it's not. It just never seems to work out like that.
After you go through the onboarding process, because I really do like that approach.
Yeah, and I think kind of like what you were saying though, CJ, it is very important then that you kind of have to act like a detective and try to pull the pieces, like, all right, you talk to this person, figure out what they're doing, you talk to that person, figure out what they're doing, and then you try to piece the whole thing together. That's typically the way I find that it ends up, is a lot of, you have to be a pretty good puzzle solver, and then mix that with some interpersonal skills, and then eventually you'll get a good picture of what the security program's like.
You sound like a bad actor. You sound like the people that we're trying to avoid.
Did anybody else have anything left on that one before I push on to the next one?
Nope.
Perfect.
Right on time, right, Nick?
Right on time. Always on time. We often hear that people are the weakest link in cybersecurity. How important is awareness education and training in moving users from weakest link to first line of defense?
Well, I think this one is mine, but now whenever somebody says bad actor, my mind just goes to like Nicolas Cage, and then I can't focus. So I apologize. But I think I said I spent the bulk of the last 15 years in higher education, right? And I think it's really important when we think about education and educating our users. I do so often cringe when we blame our users or we say the users are the weakest link. And really, it's a mindset of trying to change them to feel like they have a role, right? So we often say that everyone has a role in information security or cybersecurity in an organization. I had bumper stickers made once upon a time around the Smokey the Bear forest fire campaigns. I think Nick, the blog is still active if folks want to go back out and read that. And I think I've got a couple of examples of sort of the difference between training and education. And I'll stay with the rated G one for today, even though the other one I think is much more effective visually. But when we think about educating our users, we're often doing presentations and talking or using different campaigns, and certainly October is Cybersecurity Awareness Month, but we'll educate them and raise their awareness on what they should be doing, right? So it might be to use a password manager, right? That's the education part. Use a password manager. The training aspect that I think moves people from being potentially the weakest link to first line of defense is saying, we want you to use a password manager, and we're going to hold a session on how to use getting started with LastPass. And we're going to walk you through setting up LastPass and moving your passwords in there. And companies that are doing that are more mature and getting investment from their community of users. And one of the ways to do that, and we've heard this through a number of our clients, is really engaging the users in their personal lives, right? So having a password manager at home will help secure your personal finances and your credit card and things along those lines. Maybe how to update their browsers so their children are safe online, right? All of those things help educate them in their roles within our organizations around cybersecurity, but they get more engaged, they get more vested in it because it's personal to them. And then they become advocates for the program and for what we're trying to do in a way that isn't accomplished with just sort of hitting them over the head with things and saying, this is, you missed this, or this was a phishing link. And my colleagues here I'll finish up with, they're sick of hearing this, but I've been saying for a long time that security was always viewed as the office of NO. We would tell people, no, you can't do that. No, you're not doing it correctly. No, that's not secure. And people got reluctant to come and talk to us about what they wanted to do from a business aspect or what they were doing, because they were afraid they were going to get in trouble. And really trying to move that conversation in the culture. I think Jeff and Donnie and others have talked about, sort of the culture being important to the office of KNOW. We want you to know how to do it securely. We want you to know how this investment in zero trust is, as John had talked about, or multi-factor authentication, will enable the business and help us move forward and be more secure and maybe be more profitable, right? So those are, when I think about education, is really, letting folks know about the program, and all the topics we talked about today are really come back to sort of awareness of what and why we're trying to do what we're doing. So hopefully that keeps us on time, Nick, and I'll throw it back over to the other panelists if they've input on this as well.
Yeah, no, I love the saying, the no to no. And again, going back to the military background, right? Our answer was no. Our answer is no, you can't do that. No, you can't do that. And I had the power of the office behind me that I could say no. And sorry, there's nothing you can do about it. You're not changing the way we do things in the military. We cared about, the protection of the classified information, right? The same way we talk about the protection of the sensitive data and the crown jewels that you have at your organization. So coming over from military for so long, government for so long, to private sector now for what's getting to be a long time, it's changing that no to, all right, how do we say yes, right? Because we don't want security to inhibit operations, to inhibit the business. We want the business to operate securely, right? So how do we make it a yes? And I think we've done a good job from a security standpoint of doing that and working with companies and listening and making it so that the employee experience, the user experience, the customer experience is positive, right? It's not clunky. It's not, it takes me 30 minutes just to get logged in because I've got to hit MFA 9 times, right? We know where we need to be secure. We know we need to have the challenges, but we want to make sure the operations in the business can continue to grow. And that's where, to me, that no to know, right? That no to know or slash yes can really fit in. So again, that's where security is for me as we work in the private sector, is that business, that operation is paramount, right? How do we operate securely now?
And actually, I'll add to that because in my background, I was the information assurance manager for the Air Force too, and it still sticks with me today that the person who ran our information assurance manager class, he specifically, even this was probably 15 years ago, said, our job is not to say no, it's to say, here's how you can do something. It's not just to shut down, and it's also to understand why are they asking you. They might say, I want to plug this unclassified computer into a classified network. So your answer might, yeah, you can't do that. But then the next one is, why do you want to do that? Oh, I need to get this piece of data. I need to use this application. So, their need isn't to plug a laptop into a classified network. Their need is to do this mission, to do this work. And so that's where, if we can be that person who can guide them, okay, here's what you actually need to do. You need to go put in this request. We need to sponsor a change so that you can do your job securely and do it right. Because the other part is, if you tell people no and they do start seeing you as that roadblock, they're going to work around you.
Yeah.
They're going to, especially in IT, people are the worst. I'll say, we used to be a sysadmin. We will work around security things. If you keep telling us no, we're going to find some little utility you don't know about, and we're going to find a way to do what we want to do. And instead of doing it the right way with design and approval, we're just going to figure out a way around it.
Yeah, great point.
Yeah, I agree too. And Brian, to your point, from transitioning from the weakest link to the first line of defense, the example that we brought up earlier with that company that we're working with, they're so proactive, and it's because they aren't the weakest link. They aren't the most knowledgeable, but they have desire to become knowledgeable. And because of that, they're able to give us insight on technologies that we just aren't going to have as much knowledge on as they are. And that's kind of an issue that if when we're working with all these different companies, there's so many different pieces of technology that we're working with. It's impossible for us to know everything about everything. That's where, when you have an employee base that is your first line of defense, they can help guide you into how to make that a more secure implementation, or how to better secure the company. So it becomes more of a symbiotic relationship versus just a top down, you must do this.
Yeah. But that's where that awareness comes in too, Jeff, too, where we talk about, the reason I call them the weakest link. And again, I've really, adopted, Brian's way of thinking about, are they the weakest link? And the reason I call them the weakest link, the same way our endpoints are, is you have technology, right? That can be more static and block, right? I have a heart, right? I have emotions. And when you see these phishing texts, you get these phone calls, you get these texts, can you be fooled? And again, I've sat through a talk with, his name's, you guys are probably, anybody who's listened to me talk before, Chris Hagnatty spoke at one of our cyber symposiums, and he's written 8 books on social engineering and how to avoid it and how to not get fooled. And he admittedly got fooled, and it was a timing thing with an Amazon email, which is what we kind of lean on with phishing tests, right? Because everybody wants that free Amazon gift card, or my Amazon account got hacked, or something like that. So I think that's why we start thinking about the education side. Is the user is one of the only ways in sometimes, and I think making sure that to everyone who's spoken to point, keeping that awareness and that education high, right? We're looking for it. We do phishing campaigns so that the company says, not only do they stop falling for them, but they say, is this another phishing test? And now they're heightened alert, right? So that's that education that you guys have talked about, and completely agree, and making sure that end user, that piece that's closest to that Nicolas Cage is aware. Yeah,
they're simultaneously the weakest link, and also our best detector if trained properly.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be really screwed up when I start talking about bad actors. I'm going to keep going with Nicolas Cage now. So thanks, Brian.
You guys are going to be careful. We're going to get sued here by Nicolas Cage.
I didn't see him in the guest list.
I guess the other thing to add to, it depends on the size of the organization, but if you have the opportunity as you're rolling out new technology to get these user groups and get some champions involved in that deployment, you certainly get good feedback. When we had deployed major SSO implementations, we had user groups because the organizations had the folks to do that. And, you got the feedback. So we had a very frictionless solution because that's what the feedback we got from the user base. So I think as you're looking to deploy some of these solutions, if you have the opportunity to get, as Jeff mentioned, you get some of these folks that really are involved and want to be involved, get their feedback, and actually that'll help ensuring that your solutions you implement will be helpful as well.
Perfect. Anybody else have anything before I kind of move on from that? I think this is our last topic, so I think I'm able to, I have one question here in the queue, and I'm going to put it out to everyone one more time. If you want to ask any questions, now is the time. I have our social links up here on the screen and a QR code that takes you to our website. The question that I have for you guys, in the wake of so many supply chain attacks and vendor-related breaches, what advice would you give regarding managing vendor risk?
Man, all right. Let me go first. Let me go first. So it's a great question, and it's not an easy one. And I posed this back, and I actually did a webinar like this before, specifically on managing vendors and managing that risk. And when you look at managing a vendor, right, we look at what our critical vendors are, right? Those vendors that are critical to our service delivery. And when I risk rank a vendor, it's not based on security, right? Because if I had a critical vendor because they had no security, well, guess what? You're not going to be our vendor, right? So it's how critical are you to our service delivery? What kind of access to our sensitive data or our systems do you have? If you went belly up, right, how hard would it be for us to replace you? Questions like that. And again, when we start looking at that, it's vital, right? Because we have such a dependency, I use that word again, on these vendors. I also pose the question when we're doing our due diligence, right, on our supply chain, and I use SolarWinds as an example, and I also use Kaseya as an example. So in SolarWinds, and I've reviewed SolarWinds before, when I review SolarWinds before the hack, would I have approved them? So I went back and looked. They're ISO 27001 certified. They have a SOC report, right, that's done year after year after year. Privacy Shield, high trust, right? They've got every certification known to man. They're compliant. Go back to they're compliant, right? So by all accounts, they're compliant. It's attested to by a third party. There's nothing in there that would. They have a whole trust security page. Nothing in there that would have had me fail them, as a CISO in making that recommendation. Now I went back and I looked at Kaseya, and honestly, that I already have the answer because they got hacked. But when you look at everything that they showed on their security page, everything tied back to the data center, right? Their third-party data center was secure. They had the SOC report of their third-party data center. Their third-party data center was ISO certified. Nowhere in there did it talk about what they do from a vulnerability management standpoint, from a patching standpoint. So I like to think that I would have read through that and picked up on that. But I think that's the piece that I'm looking at now is in what positions do we have our own documentation? Are we operating on our own controls and not on somebody else's controls? And I think that's the piece to look at when we're looking at a lot of these vendors. And again, it ties back to what do they have for a security program? It's hard as a security officer to approve a vendor, somebody in our supply chain that does not have a security program. It's and especially if you're comparing one to the other. That's probably why the one with the security program charges more. It's more expensive for a reason. And that goes back to one of my first talking points, which is, security can be a revenue generator now. It can be something that we use to help market and generate revenue for our company. It speaks to our maturity and really how strong our product or our service delivery is. Hope that answered the question.
I'd say so. Does anybody else have anything they want to chime in there? I have one additional question that came up while you were actually saying that. So if everybody's good, I will pose the next question. Perfect. So the next question is, what security awareness exercises do you see the best results from in an organization with around 500 employees? For example, phishing simulations, USB device drops, social engineering calls, physical security testing, etc.
I got a thought, but I'll let somebody else go if they've got something else.
Just a reminder,
I
with 500 employees was the sample size.
Yeah, and I would just, before CJ goes, I would just say that list is, for me, that's tactics, right? I want to know outcomes. What behavior are you trying to change? How are you going to educate the employees when they fall for any of those tactics? So with that, I'll throw it back to CJ.
Yeah, I'm a story guy, right? You guys on this call, I'm a story guy. So, and I just presented to a group in Hong Kong last night, and that was the feedback. I gave 4 real life scenarios that are happening right now that we're seeing all over the place. I've got a Geek Squad hack that I had a company get targeted with and actually fall for, MFA fatigue, and I used the now financial aid forgiveness and the boss scam, as real life examples, and told the story of what happened and where the errors were made. And to me, those real life scenarios are things that are happening in real life. We see this stuff every single day. We work in security 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And to me, that is the best way to get through to the user. That's that user on the other end of, in this case, the Zoom, perks up when they hear the real life story, right? When you're talking and reading off a slide or talking about things, and they may zone off. But you can see when you get that feedback or that body language, you see them come right back to the presentation when you start telling a real life story. So if you're giving security awareness training, if you're putting something together, I get we have the slides through whether it's KnowBe4 or Proofpoint or some of these programs, but if we can give real life training, I don't like to call it scare tactics, but it really is that. It's because they really are real life scenarios that get people's attention.
Yeah, I got another piece to add to that, CJ. So, I mean, you hit it on the head. Being able to tie it to a real life event is going to make it stick in the user's head much better than if you were to give an hour-long dry presentation. But that being said, there are some other things that we can do too. So CJ harped on those different security awareness training platforms. I think an approach that I've been taking more with clients lately is trying to distribute it throughout the year. So a lot of times the old approach was, oh, December's come along or the fourth quarter's come along. We're going to sit everybody down in a room and we're going to do an hour-long presentation to get all our compliance needs out of the way. And of course, nobody's going to pay attention to anything. They're going to sign their paper and then they're going to go on to their holiday or something like that. What I like to do now is try to make bite-sized security. So like you mentioned Proofpoint and KnowBe4, they have curriculums pre-made. They've got small videos that are 2 to 3 minutes in length. And I try to spread that out throughout the year. So like 1 month we'll do, all right, this will be focused on phishing. Now for phishing 2, you can even tailor that even further based off the phishing campaigns that you're doing. So if you're seeing specific types of phishing being more effective than others, then you can use videos like that. But then the next month it will be about password complexity. After that, it will be about MFA, stuff like that. Just small bite-sized bits of security throughout the year, keeps it in their mind throughout the year, and it makes it much more easier for them to digest. And they're actually more likely to go through the training and actually pay attention to it if they know it's only going to take 5 to 10 minutes out of their day. One other point too is knowledge assessments. Those are kind of, I know people hate doing them, but again, if you try to keep them a little bit more into a manageable length, so it's going to take like 15 minutes, 10 to 15, users are more likely to do that, and you'll actually be able to get a gauge as to what their current security knowledge is.
Perfect. Great question and great answers. Thank you, gentlemen. I don't see any other questions queued up here, so I think we're ready to kind of wrap this thing up. We're right on time, just a little bit over that 2 o'clock mark, but we like to always get questions, so that was great. Thank you for that. I'd like to thank the 5 panelists here, and I'd like to thank everyone in the audience for joining us today. Just a reminder that this will be uploaded to our YouTube channel in the coming days. So if you wanted to rewatch any of this, it will be live there where we upload all of our ISACA webinars. The ISACA New England website also lists what webinars we have scheduled. We have one more in December. I know it's a security one, and our SVP of cybersecurity is talking. I don't exactly remember the title. I want to say it might be on testing or web application testing, but I'm not certain of that. So if you visit the ISAC New England website, you can see what the next session is, and you can also sign up for that one. Thank you very much to the panelists. Thank you to everyone who joined us today. I think this was a great session, very insightful, and we look forward to speaking with all of you on future sessions.